Wow, look at that. A completely new double kidney face for the updated BMW 7 Series. How good is it in exterior, interior and technology? Both combustion engine, in the middle, the plug-in hybrid, and also the all-electric i7. All the details you need to know right now with Thomas Nautical Fuel in 4K, full screen, full length. Is this one here king of luxury right now? Better than the updated Mercedes S-Class? We'll find out. Let's go here with the new 7 Series. And this double kidney is, I would say, in a way, less dramatic than before. Not sure if you share my opinion on this one here with the illumination, but I would say it looks a little bit more, you know, drawn back, considering that before it looked maybe even more like woo, screaming out. You know what I mean? And then here you see the top part is closed, although this one is the combustion engine version, the 740 actually, and this, the lower part here, is then the adaptive opening for that. We have in the front this so-called valet, so it's like this indentation right here. And this is, of course, like a planned indentation, BMW logo, and we see something of that resembling in the rear very soon. No matter if you go for the i7 or, you know, for this one here, the petrol, it will all look the same basically. Here, this then the crystalline daytime running light, and the matrix LED, the main headlamp unit, is in the lower part. It's also a two-tone paint. You can go for a one-tone paint, no problem. This one here with oxide gray in the lower part, and then black on the top part here again with this separate strip here as well. This is, of course, a lot of work then in the paint shop. 22-inch wheels. These here are in between, 21. I think also pretty cool styling, and the length stays at 5.39 m or 212 inches. The classic 7 Series sedan style, of course. Oh, and we already have a spectacular feature for you, because I have here the automatic doors on a separate hotkey here, right there. There we go. So yeah, I can open all doors at once. Soon more to this interior. We also have an updated theater screen, by the way, and I can also hold these again to close all doors at once. There we go. Technology in action. And then here the rear, this is completely new design. You maybe remember that the previous version, the pre-facelift, some even said like Bangle citations, had like this trunk cover, maybe really like put on top of the car. This does not look like that anymore at all now. This is now more, let's say, like seamlessly integrated, and also the tail lamps are wider, horizontally drawn. This gives more width again without making the car actually wider, and this valley in the front is repeated right here in the rear once again. Camera now on the right side, large opening for the trunk on the left side. I can always show you like a first glimpse. I will soon take the measurements and so on. You cannot fold the seats, but use a ski hatch, and I can fill you in with that very soon. Standard technology now, air suspension, optional rear axis steering, then the rear wheels turn in the opposite direction than the front wheels. It's really needed for the car to make it more maneuverable in tight spaces and so on, unless you don't have, you know, you have like always a lot of space and so on. Then about the different powertrains. You get rear-wheel drive versions from the 3-liter 6-cylinder outside the EU market, for example in North America. You can also find the extensive list of the power. Yeah, sometimes I just, you know, can't wait for the electric doors to open and I do it manually. That's why I'm not the biggest fan of electric doors though. They are a luxury feature, yes, but sometimes also annoying. And then the one we have in here, the 740. They don't use the I at the ending anymore, because I is now reserved for the electric ones. So the 740 xDrive here, 3-liter inline 6-cylinder, 400 horsepower and 5.1 seconds in the acceleration figure. Then, as I said, rear-wheel drive models are also available there in certain markets. That this one closes properly, by the way, you have to like really slam it against, so I'm already excusing for that. Based on this one, also the plug-in hybrid models, also in two different power outputs. We'll soon also show you the top-of-the-line plug-in hybrid model, which also has a special paint that looks very spectacular indeed. And then also the 3-liter 6-cylinder diesel is still available. There will later be, again, an M Performance model, also with an 8-cylinder coming up, I heard. And the i7 receives, let's say, the biggest update, because that one now has 10 kWh more battery at 112.5 kWh. So this will give you more range. They also updated, you know, a little bit of the efficiency and so on. So this is a nice upgrade then for the i7. Charging, however, remains for the i7 a little bit slow at 29 minutes from 10 to 80% state of charge, because it is still a facelift, not a completely new model generation. That's why they have not moved it to 800 volt architecture. Still 400 volt. So you have like 250 kilowatt DC charging as a maximum. This is like the base, like the general tech overview, general tech. There we go. So now it's also properly closed. And now let's check out the interior because we have some news there. Yeah, electric door opening is possible with the key fob. You can also pull it here. Sometimes it opens, sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, there is always something with these doors, but that's not BMW specific. It's also with other manufacturers. I also like to slam them. But here it's hardly possible because they're so heavy, there's so much resistance from the wind. And then you also have this magic soft close. Let me show that to you again here. There we go. Ta-da. Yeah. And then, you grab in here and then there's also some feedback here at the back part. Inside of the doors then, everything is wrapped tightly. Bowers & Wilkins sound system, new sound system, 36 speakers, and I'll also test it for you today. These ones here still move for the seats. That's actually pretty cool. And also nice build quality here. This lower part here, this will still be updated. It's a pre-production model, so this lower part will look like this upper part here soon. Then we have a new steering wheel carry over from the Neue Klasse iX3, i3, with the difference is that the white one is from Animal, where it's not from Animals in the iX3 or the i3. Just for reasons of tradition, there's no technological or logical reasons for that because the material feels completely identical, honestly. And then you can get a sports steering wheel. The sports steering wheel in black also is available animal-free, like in the iX3 or i3. And then you get an M Sport steering wheel with spokes in the lower part. And then these integrated buttons right here, which only appear when you can actually really use them. Seats, you can also get the Veganza animal-free seats. These are the animal skin seats. The only sad thing is that the Veganza is not available with seat cooling. That is only available for this seat. For the other one, they probably forgot it, basically. Then let's get inside. And then you can move the seat backward right here. And then with one A9 6x2, there is still some headroom left. But you see, that this platform also supports the battery in the lower part. You don't sit too low, actually, but it still works. And beautifully done here that we also have the microfiber covering here from the inside, and also then here, for example, from the sun blinds and so on. Cannot extend it right here. And the steering wheel goes up and down electric and also in and out electric. We have a control then right here, left side next to the steering wheel. And in the lower part, the manual opener here, they actually increased the size for that you can easily see it where you could, just in case, open the door manually. And this is the completely new cockpit of the BMW 7 Series. Carry over from the oh, now the voice assistant is listening to me because I said BMW. So carry over from the BMW iX3 and the i3, but with some special features, let's take it that way. You've seen the new steering wheel. And yeah, it is splitting opinions in the form, but I have to say the grab in here for the thumbs, this is extremely good to control. I would probably maybe not go for this specific one, but in this case, I would go for the animal-free solution, then the sports steering, and in the iX3 and the i3, I would pick the M Sport steering, which has like the spokes in this part here, in lower part, so you can play around with that a little bit in the configurator. You also have the same infotainment cut out in here. It's a unique cut out. Very interesting, that it also fits in with the rest of the design of the interior. And special to the 7 Series is this passenger display, which is really a layer behind that the driver is not tempted to look at that actually. And it goes really a little bit in there design-wise. It's standard also for the 7 Series. And the question is, some use the passenger display, some not, but it's also not that much distracting. It might look a little bit weird right there. What do you think about that? And also integrate this panoramic vision. This, I think, a cool idea because there is still a head-up display. And you can use the head-up display, but you actually wouldn't have to, because the idea here behind was that you move the infotainment system closer to the driver. So although we have sadly lost the physical dials, we can still easier control the climate unit then here when we move from the steering wheel to the climate buttons. At the same time, move the instruments further away, that they are more or less in long focus in comparing to the road. And I think that's a great idea. You can very well see the speed and so on. You don't have to put individual elements. If you say, yeah, that's annoying, just leave it black and have only the speed. That is all possible actually. And I think this split is better than having everything in the same level where you always have to have a short focus when looking here, and maybe the steering wheel is blocking the instruments and so on. So although you have to get used to this new interior layout, I think it is actually a good idea because it is also form follows function. Not everything was necessary, yes, but main part of that is really form follows function, and that's, I think, a good thing. Here we have this panoramic roof. They also have these illuminated lines in there. You cannot open it. It's now also standard. The only thing is that you can close this shade. Of course, it will still get hotter in comparison to when you have just a fixed roof. And that is interesting here. Look at this new element here. Oh, that looks fancy, right?
Looks like this here.
About that. Yeah, it looks like this. You know, it almost looks like it's not a material, but as it would be like a screen, you know. That's interesting. Always new things to discover, definitely, right? The seat itself, by the way, is very plush and comfortable. So they also have like a high seating depth to it. That's, of course, you know, for this luxury segment, pretty nice. And one difference, of course, to the recently published Mercedes S-Class facelift is if you want to go animal-free, here it's still the Veranza, but not with ventilation option. And in the S-Class, they use a fabric option because they used it in the very first Mercedes S-Class, the 116. So if you want to go animal-free with the S-Class, it's the fabric option. And yeah, we're soon going to test that out for you and tell you about the differences. But clear difference is that on the inside, BMW has, let's say, the more progressive, futuristic interior. Now the voice assistant is once again responding. And the S-Class is, let's say, a little bit more drawn back, but both go for screens. So screens all over the place, basically. Seating comfort-wise, I would say that the seats here in the 7 Series are a little bit more comfortable in the S-Class, but I have yet to test then the fabric seats in the S-Class, of course. There will be more changes upcoming for the rear as well. And then here in the front, you can get both. This is for Apple devices, that you have this magnet holder. The cooling, they say, is supposed to be in this very tiny ring around that. That's interesting. But you can still get, let's say, like the Android setup with a classic inductive charging pad, because it wouldn't work otherwise. And then cup holders are two-way adaptive here in the front. Gotta say that the old cup holder solution was to me more beautiful though. And then here you have still a manual jog for the volume. This is the gear selector here, and also soft for the... That could actually be softer for your elbows, honestly, but still okay. Split opening with some space underneath and 2 USB-C chargers. And the new Bowers & Wilkins sound system here, different stages you can pick basically. And we've been testing it here now a little bit, and it has a great in-depth sound, great surround sound indeed. And I mean, yeah, 63 speakers. So it also has this 4D sound that you have like vibration in the seat if you like it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. So it's a really great, you know, intense sound. We gotta say though that recently we tested the Burmester sound system in the Porsche Cayenne and also in the recent iterations in the Mercedes vehicles. And that one is even one level above that. So, and I also had the feeling that the Bowers & Wilkins in the Volvos somehow had maybe a better integration. I'm not sure if it's just a subjective feeling and so on. And we will test it once again in the next Volvo reviews as well, and then compare it to that. But at this moment, I mean, this is also like a new upgrade, but the Burmester sound system for me would be even above that. And here, one more time from the cockpit or driver's POV here with the steering wheel. Once again, very good grip here to put it in, even if the design is up for discussion. Then the panoramic vision, you can see from left to right, and the screen, easy to handle that one. Car settings here on the left side. Lower part is then with the climate unit, as I said. Would wish for physical dials there. Then you have a base home menu there like this, and then you can also have this home menu. And here you can select the driving modes. And what's actually very cool is that now you can configure your own personal driving mode. Oh, with doggo background screen, for example. And also the driving experience here that you can have, for example, let's say the like the chassis on comfort, like the suspension, but the steering on sport resistance. So this is now possible. And the CarPlay integration looks like this. So also using all the screen. And here on the left side, this will be a hotkey menu for all the car functions. Also, for example, that you can open these doors individually. And this will also be then here when you are in driving, that here you can deactivate the EU speed chime law thing. One thing, by the way, that is quite cool with the electric doors, that you can just close the door with pressing the brake pedal. This is, of course, then a very comfortable function. And now it's time for the rear seats. Then the rear seats, also plush and comfortable. Headroom, there's still headroom left because the roof there is rolled in the front. And legroom as I would be driving. This is then the standard legroom behind the driver's seats for a tall person. And then interesting here, you have these window controls and the blinds. And when you lower the window, then the blind also comes down. And by the way, dual glazing here, also for the rear windows, very important. But now I was thinking, like in the Mercedes S-Class, when I put the window up, I can just use the button to put the blind up again. But that doesn't work. You have to go in this small screen and then press on the window to raise the electric blind again. And I think it's just an easier solution when it's also combined with pressing here, because lowering down on the button is possible. But, wait a minute, that's interesting. So you also, when you press the button slightly, the window directly goes down a little bit. It seems like, yeah, the window goes down a little bit then. That's interesting. Yeah, I like the function more in the S-Class, you know, where you can use the window lever really to fine-tune shade first and then the window actually, because now end up controlling everything again from this screen area there. There's also a rear blind here, of course, also electric. I can also hit open all or close all. That would also be possible. However, in comparison to the S-Class, here once again, I think the seat ergonomics are better. So it's just more comfortable to sit here in the rear in comparison to the S-Class. Then the middle console, slide down this one. Here in the front, you open the cup holders, 4-dot design, pretty cool. And then here, open this one for 2 USB-C chargers. Everything also covered from the inside. Slide down this back again. And very funny that you can here remove this first wrap. There we go, and then you can also access the ski hatch to the trunk right there. And of course, more executive functions to come, because, let's move back in this position. So, first of all, they have updated the theater screen. And here, once again, in this side screen, there we go, theater screen. So then, there we go. So this is how it folds down, and it has a new software. Also, it has 2 years of internet connection inbuilt, and that means you can from here then access everything, also like YouTube and so on. So far it was always like restricted to the Fire Stick actually, and now you can also just activate then YouTube here in the rear. So that is also possible then. So yeah, that's actually quite cool. So that might be a good thing also for the kids in the rear, and that you don't look down to your devices, maybe get sick. Here I think it's actually good to look up. However, sometimes depending on if the seats are more in the rear, then the screen can go that much forward, and then it's also relatively close to you, gotta say that. Then I can also put it away again. And there was more in the rear. So there we go. And then it is gone. And this one is also equipped with the executive rear package. You see it here that the seat is really drawn back in the lower part here, and this is also in the calf rest. And once again, we have to search for that in that menu, and that also shows like why don't I have like a separate button for that. So seats, and now I press this button. There we go. And I'm already preparing to take off my shoes. High floor mat, that's of course always very cool to see. They feel really nice. There we go. And the lower part is going further. And then there's a very interesting fact, by the way, that in the S-Class, the normal, there's short wheelbase S-Class, long wheelbase, which is standard in the US. And then the Maybach, which, listen and repeat, Maybach, the German. That was an even longer wheelbase. And even in the Maybach version, I cannot fully stretch my legs with 189/6/2. There's like this bit missing, because the seat here in the 7 Series goes a little bit more forward. And here I can actually completely stretch my legs. This is very interesting, right? So they have found a mechanism that it really goes very, very far forward. So yeah, this is something very special indeed. Look at that, you know, this calf rest here, you know, like it's super wide. Then there's just a small gap then here for my feet, and I can really fully stretch my feet in here. Yeah, that's something, right? Oh, by the way, if you've seen this smartphone case here, before only Mercedes did that, now BMW started with this stuff already, that our smartphones are locked in, because, I mean, from these secret car shootings, there are always leaks, and in the least parts, these are the creators. Usually the leaks are from somewhere else, but not the creators, because it is in our interest to keep everything, you know, everyone plays by the same rules. And to like a agreed embargo, everyone is allowed to go online to have like fair competition for everyone. That's totally cool with us. But now, of course, when there are leaks from other places, we also have to comply to certain, you know, restrictions and so on. And then these smartphones are hidden in these cases that we cannot take photos and directly put them online, which I would never do anyways, you know. Yeah, but that's the same thing. New rules, and that's why you also see this strange stuff here flying around in the car.
Swim with that.
Yeah, it looks like you can also go swimming with that one, right? So yeah, interesting times indeed. And soon AI robots will probably take over my job. Yeah, hopefully not. If you stay true to Autogefühl and stay subscribed and keep supporting us, then we will not be replaced by AI robots, hopefully. This is super comfortable here. So yeah, this is, I think, for me, the dream setup here for the executive seating here. I can't remember any other executive sedan that is so comfortable here in the rear. I really gotta say that. And also with these special cushions, indeed. They are, by the way, also from microfiber, because it is actually the you know, the more pleasant material to the pale skin. I've got to say that. So yeah, this is very well done, very well executed in the executive spec here. By the way, here, interesting mechanism for the ISOFIX. You can fold this up, then you have the access to the ISOFIX anchors, and then you could pull this again, and then it's going backwards and pulled tightly again. Yeah, interesting. Haven't seen that so far here. Now to the trunk or the boot. So the trolley here fits in easily, also vertically. So it's actually not that flat. And the width here is between the wheel arches about 36 inches, 90 centimeters wider than here. And then the standard length, we are here at 1 meter 16 or 46 inches. And the height is at 22 inches or 55 centimeters. And you can see here, this is then that small ski hatch where you can also load things through. And here we have a second car for you. First of all, the Tanzanite blue, but a special paint that in the lower part it is the matte Tanzanite, and in the upper part it's the metallic look. We have discussed it here before. I think I'm not the biggest fan of this combination. Maybe you are. Leah says it's great, you know, but I don't think so. So it's totally matter of preference. And this is also the M760E. So this is the top of the line plug-in hybrid model with 612 horsepower and 4.2 seconds in the acceleration figure. And you can see here the grille, kind of similar. Here then we have the M inside, so a little bit of the difference for the M performance model. Illuminated double kidney around once again, and you can also see how it looks like in a different color. And we can also take a look at the side profile. These are also additional things you can get here with the M colors at the side mirrors. This is probably not the best idea for wind noise then at higher speeds, gotta say that. And then we have also the M logo right here and special 22-inch wheels. So these would be the biggest size available in the rear. You can once again see these new stretch tail lamps. Yeah, it's kind of close here in this different location than M760E. And this black spoiler lip here on top of that. Here again, you can see the difference between the metallic shiny and then also the matte paint in the lower part. And also somewhat different interior. We can take a look at that. So we have also the electric doors, but yeah, there we go. And then here we have some like this fabric wool mix, which is also available here. Then also on the seats, for example. And this is the M Sport steering wheel, which has the spokes here on this part. We also know it from the iX3. This is the steering wheel which, let's say, looks a little bit more normal than the other ones that have the vertical spokes. And plug-in hybrid thing, only AC charging, 18.7 kilowatt hours is the battery here for the plug-in hybrid model. That is just really tiny, slightly more than before, so no big change there. So what a tour. Once again, prices 120,000 euros at least, 160,000 euros, you know, when you go for one of the more expensive powertrain options. And this is excluding extras. So if you look at this one here right there, it's not the most expensive powertrain, but of course you can add a lot of extras that you can also move it in the 200,000 euro area. So this is of course once again among the top of luxury. And also if you compare the Mercedes S-Class, for example, I'm maybe one of the rare people that like both from the exterior, the 7 Series and the S-Class. I think here with the update, the 7 Series is a little bit less unique, but in a way of that before it was maybe, let's say, too unique. So I think here it looks a little bit more elegant, a little bit more drawn back for 7 Series aspects. What do you think about that? Tell me in the comments. Interior is of course now with the Neue Klasse update, inspired from the iX3 and the i3, way different than in the S-Class. On the one hand, more form follows function because, you know, far away panoramic vision, closer to your infotainment. Makes sense. Steering wheel, good to control here. Of course, we can argue about the steering wheel design. Yes, I totally agree to that. But you can also pick the different design. And to me, the seating is more plush, more comfortable, better in the ergonomics than in the S-Class, both front and in the rear. And the executive seating is also better executed. The executive seating is better executed. That's like really a tongue breaker, right? The executive seating in the 7 Series is better executed than in the S-Class. Yes, that's it. Sorry about that. Because it's just a little bit longer and more comfortable also from the ergonomics. Then again, some of the interface is better in the S-Class, especially in the rear, because you have separate buttons for folding flat, to control the windows and so on. The S-Class also has more extensive rear axle steering, which helps us very much, when getting in and out of basement garage and so on. And we have to drive the facelifts, of course, but so far the S-Class was also a little bit more silent at higher speeds on the motorway. But this one also has dual glazing. We'll also see how the S-Class facelift and the 7 Series facelift compare in this direction. Animal-free solutions here with the 7 Series, the Veganza seat. Same styling, also very plush, sadly not available with seat cooling. In the S-Class, they set sails then on the fabric seats. Also very interesting approach, which might work well in Germany, maybe not on North American and on the Asian markets. However, you have the heritage there from the 116 S-Class, from the very first S-Class, also keeping you updated on that. Then, of course, different strategy where the 7 Series has the i7 on the very same look, the very same platform, whereas the S-Class is separated from the Mercedes EQS, which some don't like so much in the styling and so on. So this is like a fundamental differences. But to me, both are still together king of luxury, and it doesn't make any sense to go above that, like for one of like these super luxury brands, because they are the worst cars. The S-Class and the 7 Series, they are still top of the game. At least that's my opinion, because they drive so extremely well and they have good solutions also on the interior. What do you think about that? And now it's time to compare the S-Class facelift. And recently we also had even the Maybach.